That's why personality profiles have been gathered for many, many years on every single person by police and organizations, because they want to know if you are predictable. In fact, the control freaks cannot stand the possibility of unpredictability. And if you are unpredictable, meaning you have a mind of your own, and you might not choose the path in a particular walk that they expect you to choose, you could cause problems. In fact, they might have nervous breakdowns that you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So that's what we're seeing here now. We're seeing those who need the group wanting to conform, accepting all the ridiculous totalitarian-style laws that are coming down. And they have. You see them at the airports where they bend over, please. And it's now, they've accepted it. It's a way of life. They've adapted. As Plato said, man is the most adaptable species on the planet, meaning they can do with us as they wish. We will accept it eventually till it's normal. Anything can be made normal. Anything, by the culture creators. Culture itself is plastic. It's pliable. It always has been. The ancients wrote about it, how they created culture, how they altered it, guided it, reshaped it over and over again. And it's never stopped. And when Russell talks about bringing in big Madison Avenue and all the big advertisers because they had the sciences of how to make people do things or buy things they didn't really need. It knew the psychology of greed, of envy, of wanting to be noticed. They used all of the sciences of human nature and they adopted them right in. Now they market the ideas right into our heads. The slogans, the buzzwords, the I'm offended attitude. People who parrot these slogans are giving themselves away as people who are not thinking for themselves at all. People quite naturally today talk about global warming. We've had years and years of propaganda from all the nature shows and public TV stations, which are often the worst ones for it, on this global warming. Even though children's books at school 50 years ago had detailed data on the cycles that we go through every 500 years or so of warming periods that last maybe a century, 2 centuries, 3, and then goes back again to a colder phase. That was always known. Today, they just stopped talking about it. You think this has always been like this, and you can be conned so easily through ignorance, basically. And the big boys are using this to further their agenda, to take over all of the planet, all property, all rights of water, food, and even the air itself. Everything which you need is going to be under the guardianship of Plato's guardians, who will not live as you will live. They will live as kings and queens have always lived, and you will accept that. You can accept those things which cannot be reconciled because it's your nature to accept it, as long as it's marketed to you by faces you know. And would they lie to you? The masses, as always, will be led by their chosen leaders to vote for another party or another person, as they always are told, you see, and this is always the solution. If we just get someone else in, they could change it all. They've learned nothing from experience. Even though they've been told over and over the histories of political parties and the con game they all pull over the public, they pull the wool over your eyes. In fact, they have one hell of a party. It's quite a party. Together, the parties won't change anything, but that's what's been held out to the general public, who think they're awake, but in reality are trying to save a system which is familiar to them because they grew up in it. Now it's shifting to another phase. So look for a hero or heroes to come in like John Wayne and do it all for them. Make everything right again. And this will not happen. In the United States, John Kerry and others have said if they get in, they will actually further the war on terror and increase the forces in the Middle East. So we know the agenda is one way only, regardless of who appears to be in charge of it. It's a must-be. It was planned long before September 11th, 2001. Long before. All the machinery to bring in totalitarianism was hammered out in think tanks in select places like the Pentagon. All the reactions of the public were figured out in advance. All the strategies to deal with complaints from the public or fears, etc., were dealt with in advance. All the little buzzwords, the terms that you hear, were all figured out long in advance. So they can't stop now. They must go all the way with this. And whatever it takes to make this, to pull pull this off, they will do it, whatever it takes. In ancient times, that was no different. They terrorized the public of city-states, and tyrants would say, oh my goodness, there's just these evil terrorists everywhere. And the military were let loose on the public. You had the same thing, your checkpoints, your questions on the street, searching for daggers, all that kind of thing. Same old stuff. Why change the formula if it works over and over again? And they can panic the people over and over by crying wolf, by telling us ridiculous things to get us all in a panic, as though anybody in this day and age could sneak something in that would cause, for instance, atomic explosions, because the intelligence agencies are all completely interwoven worldwide and have been for a long time. The groups who opposed regimes have been led by the same people from the West, the CIA and so on. They've been leading them all along as well. They supply the leaders to these groups. They have guys like the one in Korea who can say his oddball things when he's told to say them. And the West shakes in their boots. It's a nice little bit of drama to show you how insecure our world is and how we've got to change it all and give up all kinds of freedoms because the world is just too unstable. Last March, according to the United Nations, we were to get plagues of the bird flu. And when it didn't happen, they said, well, it will happen in the fall. That was to be added on top of it all. And I've watched the geese going south, and I didn't see one of them sneezing or coughing. You know, hype, 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 terror, 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 uncertainty and fear. And when most people in the Matrix are terrified, they cling to the coattails of their leaders to save them at any price. And this technique is being used to its fullest advantage today. A long, long time ago, the elite that ran the secret societies talked about a world system, a world global system, where they would have to make everyone conform to a set belief structure, to a one single type of economic system, and that's what's underway today. This is to be a utopia for an elite, step by step, through tyranny, through wars, and implementation of their economic system wherever they go. UNESCO following closely behind the World Bank that's shoved up in these countries to make sure they get the first of the youngest children to indoctrinate them into a way of thinking, a way of viewing life and the world. So they'll grow up thinking that their adaptation to the new style is quite natural, and to them it will seem so. And this was planned actually before the United Nations was even set up, because the League of Nations was already there. And they had discussed it back in the early 1900s, where Mr. Rockefeller was talked about the globalization. And he also mentioned the cannon fodder. And the cannon fodder are the general population. He said, yes, it's a pity that this present generation will be the cannon fodder as we go through this, because everyone's having their ideals shattered. They've been terrified. They're terrified of the changes. And they suspect, of course, that they're not being told all the truth. And the strangest thing is, when they do that, they listen all the more intently to their favorite newscasters, hoping to get told the truth, which they never have been before. The stress level amongst people, the personal stress level, is going sky high. What do people do when they feel terrified? Well, we know the reports right after 9/11 where they said that thousands of people had suddenly returned to churches in the United States. But we're seeing it in all different varieties today, even amongst the New Age movement, who really think they're trendy and they're setting the pace for the future. They think it's theirs, actually, which is the big joke. They think they are setting the direction. And the neurosis that's going through them, again looking for magical answers of all kinds to save them personally, is from a distance it can be it's tragic, but it's also laughable, where they're buying all kinds of gimmicks and swallowing all kind of absolute nonsense that's been used down through the ages to clean their house of energies and use colors and yada yada yada, because these are terrified people who are trying to bring order into their lives again, the order thing, by bizarre means, and they're swallowing it all. And again, we have the big books, heavily financed by MI6, of course, shoved out there to guide them into fantastic avenues of thought, a multi-mirrored hall of reflections of bizarro, and they can't gobble them up quick enough. There's channelers of all kinds who are channeling the aliens, who are talking about the energy coming in that's going to transform us all. There's other ones that are talking about blue beams coming in. And blue is a good color. Of course, it's the United Nations color. It's a blue lodge as well. So everyone's being used, and every group is being catered to, and no one's been overlooked. And the individual who seeks truth must go through all of this chaos and weave between it all